Good morning. Thanks for dropping in. I hope you're glad that you did when you see what we're going to make today. It's not only quick and easy, it's going to be very useful for you. And if you already have one or several, I'll show you maybe a different way to make it. And today we're going to talk about a quilt block board. Now, we have quilt design boards that you put on the wall so that you put your blocks on this signboard and you before you finish your quilt and you see that everything's in the right place or that you might want to change the blocks around. For the little design block board, it's when you're still in the stages of making your blocks. And you can set them on this board and move them around before they're sewn, before you inject the rip or get a date. And or if you're after you've cut your pieces for your block, you set them on your board in the right way to sew them together. Carry them to your machine, and they're all in the correct order. You haven't dropped any along the way, and you know exactly which goes beside which. Then, when you're carrying it to your ironing station and doing your ironing, set them back in the same place, and when you're sewing the next step of that block, they're in the right direction again. So, a quilt design board, a block design board. Very easy to make. I didn't know they were handy until I made one, and now I'm really pleased I did, and I'm going to have several more made. Now, usually, people use a corebord. Now, that's like a very thick bristle board, and you buy it at any school supply area. I got these at the dollar store, but Staples, Walmart, wherever they sell school supplies, because that's where they are located. And although they're very thin, they're sturdy. You have to work fairly hard to bend it. So it's not as though, they don't look as though they'd be reliable, and they would be, they look fragile, but they're not. You would, very, very useful. And the piece I got was 20 inches by 30 inches, and it was $1.50. So you can make several out of it depending on the size of the board you want. Now, that's the only piece of the puzzle that you may not have in your home. And once you get it, if you don't find or don't have or want to try a different material, corrugated cardboard. It's very similar, but not as sturdy as the corebord. So if you have corrugated cardboard and you're just going to carry them around, it's not like you're going to have somebody sit on them or move them around. It's not as sturdy, but a corrugated cardboard would also work. And you can try it with that to see if you really want the other. So the three pieces you need, or four, would be your corebord, and you cut it the size you want. You decide what size. To cut it, I used a box knife, or if you keep a rotary blade that you don't mind making more dull, maybe you keep a dull one for projects like this, it makes a beautiful smooth corner. I did this corner with the rotary blade, and it's very smooth. The box cutter is a little rougher, but you're going to cover it anyways, whichever you prefer to cut it with. So you need to cut it. You would want your batting, and it's really scraps of batting, whatever size your board is. And if you want flannel on top of that, you'll use it in a few minutes. Take your batting and cover the top of your corebord with glue. I use Elmer's school glue, just lightly put glue all over. Set the batting down carefully, smooth it out. While you're waiting for it to dry, you go and find a leftover piece of binding or make a piece, and you need it to put around the outside edge. Now, while this is drying, if you want to put your flannel on top of your batting, you will cut it a little bit larger, or about the same size as the top of your board. And when it's completely dry, you can set your batting down, take your binding, and you're going to put it on exactly the same way as you do a quilt binding. Start not in a corner, sew it down, and again I used a machine needle that was old and I didn't mind that it was getting more dull. So you sew it down, come to your corner, miter your corner, sew it along to the next corner and continue along. I left this one open so we could talk about it. Now, To try it out, I made a 2-inch binding. I don't find it wide enough. It's just more awkward to work with. It's certainly okay, but it's easier with a wider binding. I would go 2.5 to 3 inches because it's going to be a little wider here. Therefore, it's going to be easier to make sure you pick it up on both sides with that one seam. If it's narrower, you're being more careful about where you put it put the center of your binding here so that you catch both sides. With a wider one, you just do your sewing and not having to pay attention and turn it around every time. When you get to the end of your binding, you don't have to be quite as careful as you do with your quilt. I just cut this at an angle, lay it down, and continue with my sewing and sew past the end, and it holds it on. Now, here's one I made with a 3-inch wide ribbon, and that was really quick and easy to make. It's nice and colorful, but it was also very quick to make. Your 3 inches gives you much more area to work with, and it's like a cloth ribbon. I sewed a zigzag down the very center of the ribbon first, so that I was sure my zigzag was in the middle of the board, and therefore I knew when I sewed it was going to be even on each side, and I didn't have to be paying attention to make sure I caught on both sides. But you put it on the same way as a quilt. You bind your corners, and you cut it. I don't know where oh, here, I finished it here. I just folded it in and sewed across the end, and it's complete. And as I say, it can be just the batting or batting with flannel on top. The batting with flannel on top gives you a little more depth to where you're putting your blocks. But the batting catches the cloth quite easily, so it's your choice. And to clean it, just a cloth roller, a roller that picks up threads. So when you put your fabric, this is just a piece, not pieces, but you see that even almost at a 90-degree angle, you don't want to push it too far. This is heavy. At an angle, it'll even hold it there, so you know it's going to catch when you're laying it flat to carry it from one place to another. So 3 pieces, corebord or corrugated cardboard, the flannel, and if you want, the batting for sure, and your binding. And any size you want. You can cut it and larger so that you put more pieces on it. Now, if you do paper piecing or applique, a smaller one might be handy for you. Now, I found this I wasn't using, so why not reuse, or at least use? And it's a canvas panel for painting. And so it's really sturdy, but of course you can't sew on it. So you're going to put your fabrics on the top, your batting and your flannel if you want, put it on top. I just used duct tape to go around, and the white duct tape would have been better. I didn't have any at the house at the time. You can buy new ones now. It's called DUCK tape, which is how most people pronounce the other, at craft stores, and it's brightly designed. It's really cute. So the tape will hold it. If you don't like the back, then you're not going to see the back, but if you don't like it and want it covered, put a piece of fabric in there before you put the tape on, and so therefore you have your 2 fancy sides and you don't see what it is. Another one I got for painting at the dollar store, like for a canvas, is this long one, which I have decided I do want to cover in. I'm going to use it because all the tiny pieces for applique, and they have them all in one area. So it's just another design or another size if you want it. And with this one, because it has the board in the back and gives you a little bit of depth there, I'm going to cover the front the same as I did those, but not sew it. Make the top piece of flannel large enough so when I come around, I can bring it in under and glue it along to the wood, or even tack it, glue it or tack it to the wood, and therefore it's well secured. If you want to, and you're really ambitious, why not take another piece of batting and flannel, make it exactly the same size as the inset here, and then glue or tape around the edge underneath where you just glued the top part, and you can have it so that you carry it this way, and you know your piece is not going to blow away or slide or whatever. you have it this way. If you want to, you can turn around the other way. I'm happy with the others, but it's just another way of doing it. And the funny thing is, I made myself one, didn't know what it was. When I started YouTube, so I thought, well, I want something with a background to show you blocks that I'm making, and you're not distracted by what I'm wearing or whatever. So I took again, it's a painter's easel, and I used the batting and the flannel, but I wasn't up on how to make a design board yet, so I just used tacks to hold it on the back. Now I know the difference. I'm going to do a little fancier. But you can use it for several things. I was often use this for the YouTubes, but they're great for blocks now that I've just found out about how to use them. It's not like they're new. Lori, Pat Sloan, no, somebody decided in the early 2000s when she was giving sewing lessons and how to make a quilt that a lot of people were making mistakes carrying their small blocks around from one place to another. So she has formed how to make this. She decided how to make them and has been selling them ever since, and people have been making them. I think the big difference in these is we're sewing them and not using the glue gun. So enjoy, make several, and if you want to store them, remember they're not very thick and they're lightweight. If you want to store them flat, that's wonderful. But if you don't have space to store them flat, store them or you probably have an extra serviette holder in the house, or napkin holder, and store it in your napkin holder. So make one, make 10, enjoy them, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.